I really am pleased to sit with this panel of experts today. They're experts in their own individual fields, and they also are experts in networking and really closing deals. And so that's what we're going to talk about this morning. It's a diverse group. They're all from quite different backgrounds, which you'll hear in a minute. They also have very different approaches to networking, yet each of them is successful. So as you're listening to them, I want you to think a little bit about what resonates from what the different people say with you, because we're all different. There is not one approach to something. I think as long as you approach it with sincerity and it's true to you, that's what makes a difference. So for our process today, I'll pose a number of questions. I'll ask each of the panelists to start by taking a moment or two and telling an anecdote of a situation where they had to network that either went well or didn't go well. And then we'll try to make it a little bit conversational. And at the end, I'd like everybody to kind of go through some points, some top points on either networking or closing deals that they hold true to themselves. To my left, I'd like to introduce Jeff Burton, who you may have met or should have met on Tuesday evening. Jeff is a Stanford grad with a background in arts and sciences and businesses. He's a co-founder of Electronic Arts. He's the executive director of Skydeck, and he's really the person who's developed Skydeck into what it is today. Chuck Eng is also a Cal grad in econ and finance, a bit of an business background. He's currently a partner at Summa Ventures, a cross-border venture capital firm in Silicon Valley. Correct me, feel free to correct me anytime. Chuck is also an extremely active alum, and he's founded the UC Berkeley Greater China Alumni Association. And as part of his corporate life, he led financial strategy and global expansion for PayPal. Ricardo San Martin, next to him, is a visiting scholar here at Berkeley. He's also been a scholar at Stanford. And of course, he's a scholar in his own right and a professor at the Pontificia Universidad Católica de Chile. It's the only time I've ever been able to say that. He's a writer, he's an entrepreneur, and he's also a bridge builder. I'll tell you more about that later. Nehal Mehta, to his left, has an engineering background, fairly pure computer scientist. She's a graduate of Cal's Competitive Engineering Leadership Professional Program. She's a frequent speaker, I don't know how she does it with her time, and a recognized leader and mentor, especially for women in Silicon Valley, and she's currently the Director of Strategic Alliances with Symantec. You know, I say Symantec all sorts of different ways. How do you say it?
That's right, Mehta.
Atta Pilram, who you may have met on Monday, he generously volunteered to be a mentor as well, is also an engineer but a serial entrepreneur, currently president of TibiaMed. TibiaMed?
Correct.
It's practical tools for people with chronic diseases. He's a graduate of the competitive Cal Stanford program, the I-Corps, which accelerates the commercialization of science. So welcome, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. I'm wondering if I might take a moment to go in reverse order and ask you each to talk a little bit about an anecdote of networking or closing deals that you think would be applicable for this group, and it can be humorous.
Very good. Well, there's a couple of areas that I had my biggest mentoring experience that I could bring in is what not to do. And so throughout 3 or 4 companies that I started, I have a plethora of experiences of what not to do. So one of the cases was the fact that when the networking went wrong. And I assume this is going to talk about, right?
You would say correctly.
Right. And several years ago, when I started my second company, I met an individual that he seems to me was a good investor for a product and the companies we were working on. And so he came up with the idea that we should join their group. And he put a few $100,000 into the deal. The problem was I introduced him to one of my lead venture capital investors, and that was they were working on their first fund. And where the introduction went wrong, in the fact that I didn't know that these individuals actually wanted to be part of the bigger fund. And after we negotiated on the term sheets and everything was ready to go, we discovered that this fellow was really trying to be part of this group, and part of the conditions that he set forth to my investors, that if he's not going to be part of this new VC fund, he's not going to participate. And in fact, he took his money out.
Is it fair to say that when you're networking with people, you kind of want to make sure you understand where they're coming from early?
Exactly, exactly. And now I always believe in 6 degrees of separation. And that's where the flip side of it is. So my new company that we started, Tebia Med, it basically started by practically 6 degrees of separation, that we met a group in one of the hackathon. And we won the big prize. They didn't. But I liked their concept and ideas. It just wasn't presented correctly. And so through a third person, third party basically, the whole team came together. So that is a flip side of the 6 degrees of separation, and that really helps us with introductions.
I actually am curious. Have you met this person again in your entrepreneurial life, who you were talking about initially?
Yes, I did. And in fact, I really wanted to bring him part of the group, and I find out he was really a great bridge, but then the person that really could contribute in either way. So he has his own way of doing things. So
even though that didn't work out in that situation, you still try to keep up that connection?
Correct, definitely, yes.
Nehal?
I'm going to go with a recent example, and to me this is a success story, but we'll share a little bit of both. 2008 was a very difficult year for Silicon Valley. There were a lot of layoffs around. And that's the one thing. In your career, you're going to experience a lot of that. You may have to lay off people in your own company or be part of that. Again, don't take it personally. This just happens, right? And so as part of that, what I did is I set up meetings with VPs and SVPs at the company. And just, after my exit, just wanting to introduce myself. They all granted me the meeting. And sure enough, when I met with them, I didn't ask for anything. I just introduced myself and left it at that. And fast forward 4 to 5 years later, I was, after taking the ELPP classes, I was looking for a change from engineering into a bit of a broader business role. And one of the VPs I had met with is now a chief product officer with a much larger portfolio back at Symantec. Ping him on LinkedIn. Within 24 hours, he copies me saying, get on my calendar, copies his admin on it, on his calendar. 2 days later, I have a job.
What did you, why? What's, like, are there 1 or 2 words that you can say why you think that worked?
So a couple of things, right? One is when I introduced myself, I did not ask for something, and in turn, was there. That's one of the things I always say is offer to help first, and don't ask for help. See what you can offer to the person. So just say, hey, can I make some connections for you? I noticed your daughter is 12. Has she been to the Dare to Be Digital conference for middle and high school girls? Use your skills and leverage to see what you can offer that person. And then it stays in their mind of who you are, what your brand is, and in turn, how they can help you.
So what's interesting is we had this pitch session last night. And in the pitches, you kind of wanted to ask immediately. You wanted to ask for something. And people started out immediately saying what they wanted. But when you get into real life, things don't run in 2-minute intervals always. So it's helpful to not always. You have to play it by ear, but maybe you don't ask for something immediately. Yep. So it's interesting. Ricardo, you have a very different approach. And I don't think you even like to use the word networking. I'm wondering if you could talk about that a little bit.
Well, relationships, better for me. Yeah, I need, maybe because for my background, I come from Chile, and Chile is top in one ranking, which is low interpersonal trust. Very low interpersonal trust. Yeah, so we don't trust each other, in Latin America in general. I mean, we think ideas are very important. That's what we think, right? So someone is going to steal my idea. Right? So it happens.
I
right?
think that's not just Chile. I think it's probably outside of Silicon Valley.
Right.
Also, I mean, whether it's the U.S. or broader.
Right. But I want to tell you something that went extremely wrong. And because of these cultural differences. So I have a friend here, which is a very interesting entrepreneur from Chile, and he was raising $3 million. This is 2 months ago. So I was in Chile, and he says to me, why don't you introduce me to some, it's a medical device, some doctors here, which maybe I don't know, someone who wants to invest here. So there was a friend of mine, someone I knew, and I said, you know, this guy is a rock star in Silicon Valley now. He's coming to Chile to raise some funds. He already raised millions of dollars in Silicon Valley, but it's more meaningful for him to have some Chileans involved. So I go there. I introduced himself. The guy had really just a contact. He was like, his sister was married to the guy in charge of the biggest hospital in Chile. That was his only asset besides money. So he says to the guy, okay, I'll introduce you to my brother-in-law, but how do I go in the deal? I don't know how to put that in English. What's in for me? And the guy looked at me, my friend that had lived in Silicon Valley for a couple of years, said, you don't do that there. You just introduce people. He's not bringing anything to the table besides a name. So why is he asking? He asked 5% of $1 million. And I felt like, you know. So we had to pull out of the meeting immediately because the guy was already making calculations how much he was going to get. And that was normal in Chile. I couldn't blame the other guy. Yeah. That was normal.
What would you do differently?
Huh?
If you had to do it again?
What would I do different? I would warn the guy first. The other guy said, you know, if you have something of value, this guy is coming from Silicon Valley, there's no value or it's favors you do to each other. But you don't charge for that. Don't charge. So if you want to give the name, give it, but don't expect anything. I would have to social.
So I think it really is important to think about these cultural differences because even though we've been saying it for decades that the global barriers are going down further and further, they really go down in the entrepreneurial community. So you really are working cross borders all the time. And so it's incredibly important to take cultures, just do a little bit of find a network that's multicultural. Talk to a couple of other people and say, what's the norm here? So that's helpful.
Well, actually, talk about multicultural aspects of things, and I actually kind of agree that, you know, normally the sense of trust in Silicon Valley, there's actually, I say there's certainly more of that, but it's less of that, you know, overseas, and whether it's Chile, I happen to spend a number of years in China, you know, being sort of the president of the Berkeley Greater China Association. So I've dealt with, you know, I think the trust factor is certainly less of that as well. But what's interesting is I mean, I think the element of network, as in your trusted network. And this is actually a story about one of the companies that I co-founded. You know, so I was more on the finance, you know, business side of things. So I had another co-founder of mine, which is really, he's actually got like 15 patents. And they were looking at, you know, looking to finance or fundraise for that company, which was a number of years back. And so when we were kind of looking at sort of the business plan and kind of looking out to the universe of investors, one of the things that's really important is that close circle or that warm circle of friends. So I happen to know, you know, this person that I've known for a number of years, and I think that to kind of highlight the fact that sometimes it would be great if you know someone who's an investor for a number of years, and let's say the first thing that you do is not an ask, meaning that you don't really want to ask that person right away and say, I mean, just like if you're, I mean, a dating game, for instance, right? I mean, you go out and whether female or male, you're not going to ask someone the first time that, would you marry me, right? And I think the concept, and it just so happened that in that case, I've known this person, this investor for over 5 years. And I actually, over the years, I get to know that person, that they're really interested in a certain segment of the investment focus. And so, and then when I was building my, the company at that time, saying, wow, okay, 1 and 2 and 3, all these key elements sort of line in, and then we just kind of go to him, and it just, things just work out wonderfully well. Now, but most of the time it doesn't work that way. And the way I would say, a lot of time when you are raising money, one of the important things is it's really have what you call a warm circle of influence. And what I mean by that is actually, let's say if you are co-founders, 3 or 4 co-founders, or 2 or 3 co-founders, now if you don't have the right kind of people or right team members, what you want to do is actually build out your advisory board members. That's really important. That's actually, these are important door openers. These are what you call trusted people and whatnot. Now that company, subsequently raised about $20 million actually. So I'm very glad that things actually work out and doing very well actually. I think in about a few, 1 or 2 years, looking for probably a major exit of some sort. But I would recommend that as you're looking out for sort of the fundraising elements of things, to make sure that you have this warm circle of influence, if you will.
That's great. So I'm kind of jotting little things for our top 10 list as we go along, just in case no one else is. And if someone else is, I welcome that.
Okay. I was thinking, well, I always say that the biggest asset that I carry around with me is my network, my group of contacts. And I think that, that one of the things that is somewhat unique, but it doesn't need to be only that situation, is that the Stanford network is one that is quite valuable. And there's an attitude that if you're from Stanford, if you're a part of the Stanford family, alumni, you respond to people from Stanford who contact you. Now, I don't know how you pass that ethic around. Maybe because Stanford is so much smaller than UC Berkeley, maybe it's more possible. But there are pockets around of smaller groups at UC Berkeley, like Haas Business School. Maybe the various departments in the College of Engineering, where you have worked with friends, maybe fraternities if you're an undergrad, or sororities. But it certainly is emphasized, or it just naturally sort of is the ethic at Stanford, that when you're out of school, you respond to people who were in school with you, even if you don't know them. So that's
Jeff, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
People approach you, people know that you're the executive director of Skydeck, and they approach you all the time, I imagine, to try to get some kind of contact or some kind of into Skydeck. That's their form of networking. And they may or may not be from Cal, or they may or may not be from Stanford. What appeals to you when you're hearing from people? What will make you respond to them and try to help them?
Wow.
I didn't prep you, sorry, but you know.
I think mostly it's the way at this age, I'm old, I've got sort of a feel that I've developed over the years of how genuine I believe the person is that is talking to me. And so I kind of use that gut feel as one of the major factors in evaluating somebody that just comes in to talk to me that I don't know. If I know nothing about their background, I have to use just my interpersonal experiences to make a decision. And it's not a decision, it's really just to have a first impression of whether I think they are actually fully believable, and some aren't. But I was going to tell a story about connections that are Stanford connections, but it resulted in a job that I got similar to what you were saying. I had been when I got out of business school, I went to a medical instruments company in Southern California thinking that was going to be a hot field. This was in 1978. One of my classmates went to this goofy little company called Apple that I thought was the stupidest name, especially for a computer. At first I thought it was had something to do with the Beatles, record label.
The Beatles were a band in the 60s.
That's right. They had a label called Apple Records. So anyway,
That's right.
But what over about 3 years, I realized that I came back and visited and realized that I really was in the wrong industry. I needed to be in in the home computer industry. And so I left my job in Southern California. I was director of international marketing at a medical company, and I came back up without a job to Palo Alto and started working as a consultant for the university. After about 6 months, I got a call from a guy who was in the class ahead of me at Stanford. I knew him. I'd met him. I knew who he was. But we weren't friends, and we weren't part of a close circle. And he was in a different fraternity, and so we didn't have much in common. I also happened to know that he had been he'd gone to University of Santa Clara. UC, what's that? Santa Clara University?
Santa Cruz?
No, Santa Clara.
Oh, Santa Clara.
Yeah.
Santa Clara
He'd
University.
gone to law school there, and he'd been a Supreme Court justice clerk. He clerked for somebody on the Supreme Court. So I thought, well, that's kind of impressive. He called me and he said, I'm the chief legal counsel at Atari, and our biggest customer, he said, he reminded me who he was. I said, yeah, his name is Skip. I said, yeah, I remember you. And he said, I know that you went to Stanford Business School, and we've got our biggest customer has a son who just graduated from Duke, and he's trying to figure out which business school to attend, and he's out visiting, and I wanted to see if you would be willing to give him a tour of Stanford campus and talk to him about the experience at the Stanford Business School. So I said, sure. I mean, I was working on campus at the time as a consultant to the university, and so I spent about, well, I met him at the business school. They drove up in this, at that time it was not so common, you know, a long black limousine. And Skip and the father were sitting in the back of the limousine. The son got out, introduced himself, and we went and spent about, 3 or 4 hours touring campus, looking at the business school, talking about what it felt like, and all that stuff. So and they went back. The car was still sitting there, and Skip and his dad were still in the back seat doing business, I guess. And it was just sort of like, yeah, that was an interesting. Well, I don't know what happened to the kid. What happened 2 weeks later, I got a call from Skip, and he said, Jeff, I just want to thank you for helping me with this son of our biggest customer, and he really enjoyed the visit and all that stuff. He said, now what can I do for you? And I thought, well, gee, I said, Skip, there's nothing you can do for me particularly. I said, however, now that you mention it, I moved back up here in order to try to find a job in international business with a computer company. And he said, well, we're just building our international business for the home computer, the Atari home computer. He said, why don't you come talk to this new guy that we just hired from Harvard, and he's putting together a team for the computer business around the world. And so within 2 weeks, I was hired there, and I think it was another situation where I didn't expect anything as a return, but it was through that network that I was able to get the opportunity. Now, I found out later who the biggest customer was, and it was a member of the mafia in Chicago.
Is that why you're living in California?
Yeah. And then I realized, you know, as I got into Atari more, and this is an Atari story I won't go into, but it worked kind of like that. It was a exchange of favors kind of situation.
So we've all of us all the time, you may not realize it, get asked for favors. And I'm just kind of curious to know, we're also, some of you have a pretty business mindset, and you think about your return on investment. And I am curious in your minds, when you're thinking about networking, how many times do you think about you put yourself out there and want something in return? I don't know if you all can address that point.
I want to say something. Because
you
guys,
can say it. You want to say it quickly?
Yeah. Pay it forward. I've heard you guys talk about that a lot, and that's the way I've always approached doing favors for people. It's paying it forward. I don't expect anything from anybody. I expect sometime somebody else will provide me with a favor if I provide lots of people with favors.
Chuck, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I mean, you know, I've been doing favors for many, many years because of the head of the Alumni Association. Basically, you go there to serve. Now, what's interesting though is like you serve as in, you know, you set up, you know, systematic way of doing things, right? And so one of the things I really like to do is, especially people when they repeat asking the same question, the same question, the same question again, I thought, hey, we need to do something, a systematic program of helping these people. So one of the things that's why I'm involved with the Alumni Association. But on the other hand, though, is this. I think when people ask favors, I mean, honestly, one thing that none of us, very equal, that all of us have is time element. So one of the things as you get older, you know, you are not going to necessarily going to have all the time that you have versus like when you're younger. So unfortunately, or fortunately, you kind of need to prioritize things. And so in terms of favor, you do actually kind of want to prioritize like your close circle of friends. Obviously, if it's your boyfriend or girlfriend, you care more. Or if it's family member, you care more. If your buddies, you care more, right? So that's how I kind of do it that way.
So when people ask you for stuff, you're a VC
Right.
and like kind of a minor god in Silicon Valley. As a VC, if people are asking you for something,
Right.
when do you decide to give them time and not if they're not in your circle of friends,
Right.
if they're
Right.
not your girlfriend?
Very good. So very good. So I think that's exactly my point. That is, I kind of referred to initially when I said it's like your circle of influence, right? And if these people, if anybody just come up to me and say, hey, I want to get your like 30 minutes of time, you know, sorry. Now, if you're a Cal grad and say, hey, I'm a Cal grad, I know you, and say, I will pay more attention to it. Now, if you, in addition to a Cal grad, you say, hey, I'm actually, a buddy of yours actually introduced me to you, and I want to have your time. I said, oh, okay, so just boom, 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 if you will. And I think that's how that works. It's like your circle, and as I said earlier, that circle of influence, and the way how you guys are starting your company, it's important to have that circle of influence, quote unquote, advisors and people of influence to help you guys to get to the next step. Fundraising, that is, or business plan, that is, other things that is.
If someone sends you an email and says, "Hey, I'm a Cal grad. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
like I happen to be Chinese. I'm in this alumni association, and I'm friends with your neighbor."
Yes.
Would you respond to that in an email?
Yes. Yes.
Just curious. Just trying to be tactical.
Right.
How about you, Ricardo?
About, now the question is,
Yeah, switch it around. Not you asking for
Yeah.
someone else, but when do you decide to give your time to somebody else?
I think if I know something that makes that person interesting, then for me it's interesting to know that person more.
What makes a person for you?
Jeff doesn't know, but last year we were here, and I cannot call you directly, but you said something about in your younger years. You were lost somewhere as an anthropologist.
Yeah.
Where were you?
Liberia.
In Liberia, right? So I said, wow, because I look at you first and I didn't connect with you, but then now he was an anthropologist in this early, I want to know him.
You lived with a tribe, didn't you?
You lived with the tribe. He lived with the tribe.
Not
And
a
you
tribe as in Silicon Valley tribe.
But you weren't dressed
real
like
tribe.
this, right? You weren't dressed like that.
Longer here, much longer here.
Much longer. Much longer.
I knew it.
But
Right.
that,
So that made me a very interesting connection for me to know more about him.
but how on earth, it's not like that's going to come out in conversation. How did that come out?
You have
you don't lead with your tribe experience.
No,
I don't
but he
know.
said it. But you know, it's like you say something about yourself. Some people say something that is not make them vulnerable. But if I meet someone right away and he put me all his degrees in front and all his many startups and everything, sort of like maybe that person doesn't need me at all. You know, I mean, it's like there's no, how you say, vulnerability, right?
Offer someone a place to
Right.
latch
So
on
I
to
could
or help.
only help, and if I see someone that there's something that they really need. So that's where you pay more attention to that person, because that person becomes very interesting to me. You connect on that sort of like I'm not so super guy, and that's a personal thing. Yeah.
Nehal, I know you have some internal list that you kind of use.
So I was going to share that. Let me do
So if
that.
you could share
But
that.
one of the things I actually look, Victoria, at the full person, not just the career piece, and I'll respond to that. And so one of the key points that I talk about when I talk about networking is as you grow your network, as you have your network, who are the people that you want in your network? And let me explain, right? So one of the kinds of people is a connector. This is someone who is well connected with people in your university, in your field, in your community, and they're happy to make connections. Again, you always have to give something back, but they're happy to make those connections. The second kind of person is the influencer. So these are, again, not people who have a higher title, but who have earned the respect and recognition of their colleagues to be that person of influence. So if they were to recommend your name for a job or your child, to meet someone, that person will grant that request, right? That's that person of influence. The third, I say, is that informational powerhouse. Again, this is not a person of higher title. It is generally in companies, project or program managers, or sometimes even people in similar roles who know about those new projects coming up or that new grant being given, who, if you're part of the network and you've connected with them over lunch and said, I'm really interested in, that new medical device that's going to make my injection less painful. They'll know about that grant or project and be able to connect you. The fourth is your sponsor leader. This is usually someone at your company or at your university. Most of us are going to have an annual performance review of some sort. And this is that person in the room who is pitching for you to get that promotion, raise, bonus, stock allocation, grant, what have you. And then the last is your mentor and your coach, right? And I look for one within my company and outside my company. The person within my company helps me navigate, through the corporate culture of that company and helps me with my career goals as specific to the company. And outside is someone who's known me for years, who I can run ideas by, who can be that sounding board. And this set of people becomes my personal board of directors. So these are people who I call on very regularly for their valuable time. But in turn, I am this person. I'm a connector and an influencer, informational powerhouse, and a mentor on someone else's board of directors as well. So it's how you take and how you give back.
I'm curious, I don't know if it's as popular now, but like 5 years ago, everybody was talking about you all need a coach, everybody needs a mentor. And people were approaching other people and saying, will you be my mentor? And I personally don't have a very positive response to that kind of a direct question. But I'm curious, Nehal, with you, there's some people that I would like to be influence and help them out. But I'm wondering, how do you respond if someone says, will you be my mentor? Or what would you rather hear, if not that?
So the way I approach it is I take 3 mentors on every year. I'm just because I have a certain amount of time. I have 2 kids, a job, all
So I have Nehal and Ricardo next to each other for a reason. One is this way and one isn't.
I say yes. I propose marriage in it.
And I'm very specific with them. I say when someone mentors me, I meet them twice a year. I prepare for that meeting. And about once a quarter, I send them some updates, and I expect the same in return.
Okay.
Is that person willing to work with me, prepare, and work towards the goals we set? And a lot of people back out, by the way. A lot of people are not able to keep up. They just say, oh, mentor me, sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight.
So would you consider mentoring someone outside of your company?
Oh, I do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does anybody else want to respond to that?
Well, I think one of the things about the networking, as folks were talking about it, you get it when somebody approached me and asked me for some input. And like what Jeff was saying, that you never met the person before, you don't have really that much of information about that. But just through the few minutes of conversation, you're basically getting a gist of about what he's talking about, he or she is talking about, what they're looking for. And immediately in your mind, you would go, well, how am I going to help this person, where they're going to go? But also, I find out this networking things could be a double-edged sword too as well. because you have a set of the friends and the network, and that is part of your asset. And you could introduce someone to physician friends of yours or a corporate investors or whatever. And it turned out the guy turned out to be a total jerk. And that really going to reflections of who you are with that relationship. On the other hand, been so many times that just talking to conversation, I noticed this person really has something to offer. And by the way, I know Jeff was talking about this before, and maybe there's a match here. And just passing the names. But I usually give both a kind of a heads up.
So
Then I said, for example, I said, well, Mike is going to be calling you. I've met him, Mike, for example. And I give a little bit background. Make sure that he's a little bit edgy type of guy and he's way up there. You want to just bring him a more realistic point of view. But I really think he has a lot to offer.
So it's
So
interesting.
Taking on that point, though, I am very conscious, again, of my network and very specific when I make the connections. So, I will say, I work closely with this person and I do highly recommend them. Or I actually don't know this person directly, but it's come through another dear friend, and I'm simply passing it along. So I'm very specific in how I connect people.
I'm going to spice it up actually a little bit, that conversation. If you find it. I said, I used the analogy earlier that is boyfriend, girlfriend. But it is truly true. And also, it's actually a matter of fact, spice it up at one level, that is husband and wife. I mean, if you will, honestly speaking, the first time, if you know a girl or a boy, right, would you ask the question, would you marry me? And that's, I think that the reaction is, not that it's at that level, but would you be my mentor? It's really kind of awkward in a way when you kind of say something like that. Most of the time, people don't know you. It's just like, would you marry me? I mean, come on. I mean, would you be my boyfriend? Or would you be my girlfriend, right? I mean, that's very awkward, right? And so really, in that kind of situation, that shows that you're not sophisticated. Hopefully none of us from Berkeley would say something like that. You don't say it that way. Even though if you want someone to be your mentor, you don't say it that way. What you want to say is you want to position yourself, meaning that first you want to find out who is this person, the mentor. What is his interest, right? Meaning that they may be interested in certain investments or certain things in distance, right? Because you guys all have business ideas, business plans. Not every mentor may be equally be as helpful to you. So you really want to understand what areas, expertise, they could be helpful. And honestly, the same way the mentor would think on the other hand is because they want to be respectful of people's time, and they also understand they're very busy people. So when they understand that, hey, maybe I cannot really help you. Maybe my other friend, my buddy Jeff, can help you, or Ricardo, or Nehal, or any of them can help you better. And that's where I look at it. Is if you come to me and say, would you be my mentor? I would say, whoa. I mean, I don't know if I can really be helpful to you.
you can say, would you talk to me about mentorship?
Right. Right.
Something like that.
Right.
We have a little less than 10 minutes left, and I wanted to open it up. So we've talked a lot about networking and not so much about closing deals, and I actually think that's important. It's a metaphor, because I think that you need to spend 80% on networking in order to close those deals. So that's just, you may not agree with that, but that is my thought. So I just open it up to some questions that you all may have on networking or closing deals. And Stephen, do you mind waiting for the microphone?
I want to make a point. Is it? We on? Don't be what they call an ask hole, which is ask a lot of questions, nod and smile, and don't do anything about it, which was referred to a couple of times. But we all know that we want funding and we want sales. So do not come to anybody and say, oh, yeah, that's very nice, and I'm well-founded in my principles, and my company's great. So bottom line, can you get me some investment or sales?
I think that's great. Questions, anyone? Are you all so tired? I can think of some questions that I have. I actually want to know, if I come to you, Chuck, and I say, nice to meet you, it was great, what do you expect afterwards if I want something if I know I want something but I haven't mentioned it?
Yeah.
For example, I actually wanted you to come and be on the panel.
Right.
What do you expect from me?
You know, that's a very good question, but because she doesn't show, she just smile at me, right? I mean,
I'll just look the other way.
That's the important thing. Is because oftentimes maybe you don't know when you know at that time what you want from the other person. Actually, oftentimes that may be the case because you don't really know what that person may or may not know, what kind of network, for instance, right? So I think what you want to do, we have technology. I mean, in fact, you know, LinkedIn, I mean, it's a professional network. I was actually talking to a good friend of mine who's actually one of the senior guys actually at LinkedIn. So, and also, by the way, LinkedIn is the PayPal gang, actually. It's started by a whole bunch of PayPal guys, actually. So one of the helpful things is you really want to know more about that person. You can easily know about that person by going to the Facebook or LinkedIn or any of those things. And then when you know what you really want to follow up with an email. And that's okay. That's okay. You don't really have to. Sometimes, just as you said, just being nice and just being helpful and just be respectful. I think it's all you need.
So the most painful thing for me is if someone emails me back before I get a chance to email them back. We had a speaker last year, and he just said the single thing to remember, when you meet someone, you contact them immediately and just to say thank you or LinkedIn or something like that. You don't just let it hang.
So I completely agree that follow-up email with that context is important. You know, I actually prefer that email, or even in the LinkedIn message, if you were to put it, don't just say, oh, I'll connect with you on LinkedIn. Yeah. I have 400 connections that I will not accept because someone just did that default, I'd like to connect. Give me even your two-line context. Did you do that background search? Right. Did you look for that common point of interest? And the common point of interest may be we both took violin lessons. I mean, I don't know. It could be something small. It could be something bigger. That, hey, we're both part of Berkeley in different ways, right? So find that common point and then, you know, approach. And most people are humans, right? You know, if you found that common point, if you did that research, they will, you know, if your note makes a little smile, a little bit of piece of recognition, they will respond.
Can we just get a student question just for a moment in the back?
Yeah, so you were talking a lot at the beginning about closing a deal, and we've seen different ways of to close the deal. One where it just happened, and the other one just went maybe in the wrong direction. I wanted to ask you, what do you think is one of the key characteristics a closer needs to have? If you want to close the deal, what's kind of the main character trait that you have to have in order to be able to be that closer? Is it determination?
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Right,
I'm mesmerized by your accent. I'm like, Excuse me.
Right. The times I've closed deals, you really have to know that person. I mean, for me, LinkedIn or, you know, it's like you put the best of yourself. I mean, how are you going to know someone in LinkedIn? How are you going to know your weakness or your interest if you don't connect with that person on a more deep level? Like, I don't know, there's something like about the country they come from, you've read the books, you speak a little bit of the language, you've been there, you have kids like they have, you have problems with the kids like they have. Something that is more personal, you drink a beer with that. I mean, I'm not going to get a deal done, a deal is like a marriage. I mean, I'm going to stay there forever. So, well, sometimes not.
Forces happen. Yes.
Some things happen, right? Yeah, but
vulnerability, there.
Right. So, but if I'm gonna put my time and effort and money and all of that, I need to go with that person maybe to a show together, to something together. You know, I mean, and no, even go to the family. I'm gonna close a deal now, probably with a professor from Citrus here that he wants to do a startup. I've met all his family. He has done it on purpose. Everyone is giving me a check.
People underestimate relationship building. And that's what I think you're talking about.
Nehal, you had a thought?
Well, once Jeff is...
No,
okay. My thing was, you know, sometimes do a background check even on that investor and your board member.
When you say that, you don't mean a
I don't mean the, give me your social security and I'll
Right.
run, did you have a
make sure.
DUI kind of thing. But because they have to fit with you. They have to stick with you through the journey. And being a spouse of a husband who's doing a startup, we live this every day. Which board member is that really, that pebble in the shoe that my husband hates going into that board meeting. And the others who are just there to help and be with him and, encourage on social media and everything else. So sometimes it is okay even to walk away from a deal or from an investment, as hard as it sounds, as desperate you might be, because you are in it for the longer run.
Because you,
No, I also think that there's a, after this, maybe the student and the colorful shirt, you can ask your question. I think, actually, don't think about a deal closer as in this is it, this is a one-time off kind of situation. You actually build up to it. I mean, it's small wins, small wins, small wins, small, it's big win. So you really have to, it's over time. It's going to be, I mean, you see a lot of flamboyancies and a lot of these like the WhatsApp. It's just got like $18 billion from Facebook. No, it's actually, I mean, talking to the person who closed the deal on the WhatsApp deal, actually, the story behind that was Mark Zuckerberg was trying to buy them up when they were like a $3 billion company, and it didn't happen. I mean, it's just valuations went boom, up, more people chasing after the deal. So it's actually a lot of things is actually things that you don't know actually. But what you heard is just sound bites. But it's actually a lot of it is boom, 1, 2, small win, small win, small win, small win, boom, big win, like that.
I'd like to add
we have about a minute to go. So may I just take one question? Is that all right?
Very good.
Last question. So somewhere where I struggled personally last semester was that I actually realized I needed mentors. And someone said, hey, I would love to help you. And then I didn't know how to ask for help. And so question for you guys, like, how have you either been helped by a mentor, like a specific scenario, and how they helped you through that? Or the reverse, where you help someone else who's trying to either struggle with a business problem or maybe even just like a life decision?
Can I ask one person to answer?
Yeah, actually, from the entrepreneur point of view, I really think that it's essential that the person that's going to start a business or the group write a business plan. Now, business plan is not for writing a business. It really helps you to understand what you really don't know. And so in the process of putting the whole things together, there are lots of these questions going to come up to the surface. So when you're approaching someone, then you have some ideas about what are the parts that you're missing. I mean, you may have ideas about the marketplace or how much money you need.
But how I think it's quite a specific question. How do you ask for help?
So in that specific thing, it is hard to say, oh, yeah, I was looking for help. Please help me, versus, yeah, there are some areas I need some guidance. Can we do lunch? You're still not asking, but you're kind of starting that relationship, right?
Use other words, guidance,
right?
your expertise. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so I need help in the marketing. I need help for this market, for this business part.
You're totally comfortable asking your colleagues things. Everybody's a colleague.
Yeah.
Anyways, I don't know, Ikak, if you'd like to finish us off, and then I can post a list of some things that I've heard from you all as the top 10 list.
Yeah, okay. So we had a speaker, Steve Newcomb, in our Distinguished Innovator Lecture Series.
Can we hear it? Yeah.
We had a speaker, Steve Newcomb. He was in our Distinguished Innovator Lecture Series, and he had some advice about networking, which I'm going to tell you, but I want you to comment on it because I'm not convinced that it is the way everybody thinks about it, but it's certainly a controversial angle to it. So what he said is that he had started a number of companies, and he said that, given the choice to help someone like Peter Thiel, who is far above his level and had a lot of power and a lot of influence, and given the choice to help people who were much younger and less sophisticated, or they actually, that's the wrong word, had less power, basically, but had various skills that he almost kind of wanted to invest in. He would always rather choose to help the people who were kind of one step down in the kind of the hierarchy, because he could chase trying to help Peter Thiel, but Peter Thiel was never going to help him back, you know, in future. But if he could help the people who actually needed help, he could build teams and relationships, and when those people got to be more sophisticated and capable, and as their network grew, he would get much more value out of helping them. So that was his logic, but it's a little bit counter to the way most people think, which is if you could be helpful to somebody who's got a lot of power, somehow you're going to get benefit from that. So I want you to comment on what is the right balance, or how do you approach this? Do you really spend your time with the people who are not likely to be able to help you, or the other way around?
Can we take 2 comments on that? Because I want to make sure everybody has enough time to prepare.
So I think that's actually a very good point. I think that depends. I don't think that it's actually exactly like what he said. You know, Peter Thiel, I don't personally know Peter Thiel, but I know another friend who's a classmate Peter Thiel, for instance. I think it depends. And sometimes certain people, like Peter Thiel, I don't know him personally, as I said, but certain people that I knew who are very successful, much more successful than myself, you know, we're good friends. And whenever I ask help from that person, they would help, right? So I've had, you know, but certainly I have a lot of my mentees who are, you know, who are sort of like a few notches down, which I'm very willing to help because I see them as, you know, they're going to be very successful one day as well. So I don't think that's necessarily true all the time, but I think, as you said, it's a matter of priority too. It's also like maybe there's set circle of, you know, so in your networking universe, if you will, I think generally I agree that you want to associate your people who is maybe one notch above you or not one notch below you. Sometimes because a lot of it below you or a lot of it above you is kind of harder to reach. So from that perspective, like logically, that's logical to me.
I'm going to finish this up because I think it's an interesting place to stop. I want to thank you all very much. And these kind souls are also going to be around judging the pitches, which the judging will start at 11 o'clock. So thank you all very, very much for your time.
Thank you.
And what is going to happen now is that you all have about 45 minutes to an hour. I believe we start at 11 o'clock. Does that sound right? 11, yes. 11 to 12:30 is our round ones. But you have about an hour to get yourselves to a point where you feel comfortable doing your 5-minute demo presentations. You've been broken out into 4 different venues, 4 different rooms. You can see those rooms if you look at the chart right to the left of the entrance, where you'll be. And if you're going to be using, if you're first up and you're going to be using a presentation, go ahead and go into that room and get yourself plugged into the presentation. When I say that, you know, plugged into the technology. The other thing is that as of 11 o'clock, I'm going to go live with our speakers from the week and our mentors for the week in looking at the Berkeley Bootcamp. So if you want to tweak anything on your tile, on your overview for the company, on the Berkeley Bootcamp site, or when you look at it, your business is still not up, come find me and let me know. And what's going to be happening in round 1 is that you will have 3 judges per room. Those judges will judge you on the 4 attributes that we talked about yesterday. Those attributes, you'll get a certain score, and the high scorers across the 4 rooms, this is a little bit of a change, sorry, not from each room, but the high scorers across the 4 rooms will go on and pitch to everybody in the session that begins at 1 o'clock. The other thing that will happen in parallel is at 2 o'clock, I will close the judging on the Berkeley Bootcamp, and we'll be able to see how much people raised in their rounds from the Berkeley Bootcamp. At the same time, our judges will get together and we'll look at the qualitative aspects of your presentations, and we'll announce who we thought was exemplary in one way or another. So go ahead. You can use the rooms. There are 4 breakout rooms. One of them is the auditorium. And be ready to start your demos at 11 o'clock. Look at the chart outside for that. And Iklak, did you want to say anything else?
No, I'm good.
Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. Sorry about that.